In the vast and barren desert of an alien planet, Jack trekked through the soft, shifting sands. The sun, much larger than Earth's, hung high in the sky, casting an intense heat over everything. The world around him seemed empty, desolate, and lifeless. But Jack wasn't here on vacation. He was a space explorer on a mission, searching for signs of life or anything that could help humanity learn more about the unknown planets in the universe. Jack had been walking for hours, scanning the area with his equipment, his thoughts focused on his task. The silence was unnerving, broken only by the soft hum of his communicator and the occasional gust of wind sweeping through the desert. He was far from his ship, and his supplies were running low. Jack knew it was time to head back soon, but just as he started turning in the direction of his ship, something caught his eye. There, just a few meters ahead, in the distance, was movement strange, slow, and almost hypnotic. Two figures, one small and the other slightly larger, appeared to be dragging themselves through the sand. They were unlike anything Jack had ever seen. At first, he thought they were some kind of desert creatures, but as he got closer, the realization hit him hard. These weren't just animals, they were creatures, alien beings, seemingly stranded in this harsh environment. Their fur was glowing, though not brightly, more like a faint shimmer against the sun. Their bodies were sleek, elegant, and unlike any known animal Jack had encountered in his training. They had large eyes that seemed almost too big for their faces, shining with an intensity that seemed to speak of intelligence, far beyond what their small bodies suggested. They weren't moving with the grace of creatures in their natural habitat. Instead, they seemed weak, stumbling as though they were exhausted, lost, and in desperate need of help. Jack's first instinct was to remain hidden, observing from a distance. He had been trained not to interfere with alien life unless absolutely necessary. However, the more he watched these creatures struggle through the sand, the more a strange sense of compassion overcame him. These were not predators. They were victims, stranded in a foreign land with no hope of survival on their own. Without thinking twice, Jack took a step forward, then another, until he was standing just a few feet away from them. The creatures paused, their eyes locking onto his, and for a moment, time seemed to slow down. Jack reached into his pack and pulled out the last remaining pieces of food from his ration supply. It wasn't much, just a few energy bars, but it was all he had. He kneeled down in front of them, holding the food out with open hands. The smaller creature, trembling and cautious, took a few steps forward, sniffing the air. Jack's heart raced as the creature slowly moved closer. The larger one, still unsure, watched him carefully, its large eyes scanning him as though trying to figure out whether he was a threat or not. Then, in an unexpected moment, the smaller creature gently nudged the food with its nose. It was hungry, and it accepted the offering without hesitation. Jack felt a wave of relief wash over him as the two creatures began to eat. Their hunger was clear, and Jack couldn't help but feel proud of himself for making the decision to help them. He had no idea what these creatures were or where they came from, but in that moment, they were just two living beings in need of kindness. Jack sat there for a while, silently watching them eat. He had always wondered if there were other life forms out there in the universe, and now, here they were, right in front of him. As he watched them, Jack's thoughts wandered. How had these creatures ended up here, in this vast, empty desert? Were they lost, or had something worse happened to them? Were they even capable of communication? He didn't know. But just as he was about to stand up and return to his ship, something changed. The air around him seemed to grow heavier, almost like the atmosphere itself was thickening. Suddenly, he heard a distant sound, low, rumbling, like the growl of a massive engine. He glanced up, scanning the sky, and felt a strange chill run down his spine. The ground beneath his feet trembled slightly, as though something enormous was approaching. Jack's eyes widened. Whatever it was moving fast. The creatures stopped eating immediately, their heads snapping up, their ears twitching in alarm. They seemed to sense something Jack couldn't. Before Jack could react, a shadow passed over him. Something massive, something powerful, was coming. Cliffhanger. Jack looked up at the sky, his heart racing. Hundreds, no, thousands of warships appeared, blocking out the sun as they descended rapidly towards the planet. Jack's breath caught in his throat as he watched the darkening sky. The shadow cast by the warships seemed to stretch across the entire horizon. His heart raced, and his mind struggled to process what he was seeing. For a moment, everything around him fell silent, as if the world itself was holding its breath. The two alien creatures, once focused on their food, had now frozen. Their eyes wide with a mix of fear and recognition, the ships were enormous. Their shapes unlike anything Jack had ever seen in any of his training. They were sleek, with sharp angles and an unsettling, almost menacing presence. Hundreds of them, maybe even thousands, filled the sky, blocking out the sun as they descended with terrifying speed. Jack's instinct screamed at him to run, to take cover, but something held him in place. There was no escaping this. Not now. The air around him seemed to thrum with energy as the ships neared the ground. Jack could feel the vibrations under his boots, the ground shaking slightly with each passing moment. The two alien creatures, still trembling, turned to face the ships as though they were waiting for something or someone. The larger one, which had seemed hesitant at first, stepped forward, its movements slow but deliberate. It seemed to be guiding the smaller creature, leading it toward Jack. The human watched, mesmerized, as the ships slowed their descent, settling into a perfect, eerie stillness just above the ground. The strange creatures beside him continued to stare up at the fleet, their eyes glowing brighter than before. The larger of the two creatures made a soft, almost musical sound, like a low hum vibrating through the air. It was the kind of sound that sent a shiver down Jack's spine, a tone that seemed to resonate deep within his chest. The air grew even heavier, and Jack felt his pulse quicken. It was as though the entire planet held its breath, and time itself had frozen. Without warning, a single ship descended even lower, its dark hull gleaming in the harsh light. As it came closer, the ship's surface shimmered, almost like it was becoming transparent. And then a figure appeared on the ship's lower deck, tall, imposing, and cloaked in dark robes that seemed to blend with the darkness of the ship itself. The figure stood still, gazing down at the small group on the ground below, its face hidden by a hood, its presence commanding. Jack's heart pounded in his chest. There was no telling what this figure wanted or why the ships had arrived. One thing was certain: the peaceful moment he had shared with the alien creatures was over. The gentle hum of the ships grew louder, the sound now vibrating in Jack's bones. His mind raced with questions. Was this some kind of rescue mission? Or had the creatures he fed somehow triggered something much larger? The larger alien, still standing beside him, turned to face Jack. Its eyes were no longer filled with fear, but something else, something that could only be described as resignation. It let out a soft, eerie cry, and the smaller creature mimicked the sound, its voice high-pitched and mournful. Suddenly, the silence was broken by a voice deep, calm, and utterly alien. Jack couldn't understand the words, but the tone was clear. It wasn't a greeting, but an order, a command that seemed to reverberate in the air, shaking the ground beneath their feet. Before Jack could react, the figure on the ship raised a hand, and the energy in the air grew even thicker. The smaller creature whimpered, backing away from the ship, clearly scared. But the larger creature, Jack could see now, had no intention of retreating. It stepped forward, moving slowly but surely. It seemed almost eager. Then the voice spoke again, louder this time, and the ships began to descend even further. The ground trembled with the force of their weight, and Jack could feel his knees shaking. Something big was about to happen. Cliffhanger. The figure raised its hand once more, and Jack saw the alien creatures look up to the sky, as if they were anticipating something. Then, in a blink, a flash of bright light exploded from the nearest warship, casting a blinding glow across the desert. Jack shielded his eyes, heart pounding. What had he just unleashed? The flash of light was blinding, and for a moment, everything around Jack disappeared. He felt the heat from the explosion on his skin, like a distant wave of fire crashing toward him. His ears rang, his body frozen in place, unable to move, as though the world itself had been paused. For a heartbeat, he couldn't see anything but white. Then, just as quickly as it came, the light vanished, leaving behind a silence that was deafening. The air felt thick, almost suffocating, and the ground under Jack's feet was still vibrating from the force of the energy blast. He blinked rapidly, trying to adjust his vision, The warships were still in the sky, hovering just above the desert, but now, their presence felt even more ominous. Something had changed. The two alien creatures beside him had not moved. They stood still, their glowing eyes fixed on the sky, as though they were waiting for something to unfold. Jack glanced at them, his heart racing. What had they known? What was happening here? Before Jack could make sense of the scene, the tall, hooded figure on the warship raised its hand again. This time, there was no flash of light, but a hum filled the air low and deep, vibrating through Jack's chest. It was a signal, an unmistakable command. The ground trembled once more, but this time, the tremors felt like the beginning of something much bigger. The larger alien creature beside Jack let out a strange, guttural sound, almost like a growl, as its glowing eyes darted from the ships above to the smaller creature. Without warning, the smaller one stepped forward, its body tense. It was as if it was preparing for something, bracing itself for whatever was coming next. Jack's mind raced, trying to make sense of the situation. What was this all about? Why had these warships appeared? Was it really because of the small act of kindness he had shown? Had he unknowingly become a part of something far bigger than himself? The figure on the ship spoke again, its voice commanding, yet strangely calm. Jack couldn't understand the words, but the urgency was undeniable. The two creatures beside him reacted to the sound, their bodies stiffening. It was as if the words held a deep meaning, one that transcended language itself. They were listening, waiting for a response. Then, to Jack's shock, the larger creature turned to him, its glowing eyes meeting his with an intensity that made him feel exposed, as though it could see right through him. The creature's expression softened, and it lowered its head slightly, almost as if in a gesture of respect. Jack didn't know how to respond. He had never been in a situation like this before and ever encountered anything so alien, so outside the realm of human understanding. Suddenly, the smaller creature took a step toward the ships, its eyes glowing brighter than before. The larger creature followed suit, moving with a grace and speed that surprised Jack. They seemed to know exactly what was happening, and it dawned on him that they weren't afraid. They were anticipating something big, something they were ready for. Without warning, the ground beneath Jack's feet shook harder, and the distant sound of engines filled the air. The warships were powering up. It was clear now that they weren't just here for a peaceful visit. They had come for something. The energy in the air shifted, and Jack felt a cold chill run down his spine. He turned to look at the creatures once more, but they were no longer standing beside him. They were gone, disappearing into the horizon with the speed and precision of soldiers heading into battle. Cliffhanger, a low, powerful roar echoed from the direction of the warships, and the desert around Jack erupted in a violent storm of sand. The skies darkened. Something was coming. The sandstorm erupted with terrifying force, the winds whipping around Jack like a wall of fury. He stumbled back, shielding his eyes from the biting sand. But the storm was no ordinary desert wind. It was more like the planet itself was reacting to the warship's presence. The sky had gone from a bright, glaring blue to an ominous dark shade, as though the very atmosphere was being sucked into a void. Jack tried to make sense of everything happening around him. The two alien creatures, the warships, the strange leader, and now the storm. It felt like he had unknowingly triggered some kind of galactic chain reaction. He could barely see, but he could hear the low hum of the ships as they powered up, their engines vibrating the ground beneath him. It was a sound that felt alien, mechanical, yet oddly familiar. Something inside him told him this wasn't just about them showing up. It was about something far more important, something bigger than any single human could understand. In the distance, the creatures were now visible again, moving swiftly, almost as if they were part of the storm itself. They didn't hesitate or show fear. Instead, they seemed to be heading straight toward the heart of the warships, with a purpose that was clear to them but not to Jack. The larger creature moved with an unsettling calmness, as though it knew exactly what was coming. The smaller one was at its side, keeping pace with its companion. The two were like soldiers in battle, focused and determined. Jack felt his heart race. He had no idea what he was getting himself into, but everything within him screamed that he couldn't stay on the sidelines. This wasn't just about feeding to alien strays anymore. The stakes had grown far higher. He had unknowingly become part of something that was far beyond him, something that could change the fate of 2 worlds, maybe more. He hesitated, wondering if he should follow them or stay back. But before he could decide, the voice of the alien leader echoed across the storm, carried by the wind. It was almost like a command, urging Jack to join them, to follow the creatures into the heart of the battle. The voice resonated deep within him, almost like a call to action that he couldn't ignore. It felt strange, like he was being pulled into something much larger than himself. With a deep breath, Jack steadied his nerves. His training as an explorer hadn't prepared him for this. No amount of simulations, no amount of theoretical knowledge could have prepared him for this moment. But he knew one thing: he had to act. These creatures weren't just random aliens. They had a purpose. They had a mission. And somehow, Jack had become a part of it. His feet moved on their own, following the creatures into the storm, his every step guided by an unseen force. The air was thick with tension as the warships loomed overhead, blocking out the sun. Jack could feel the intensity of the moment rising with every passing second. This was it. He had no choice but to face whatever came next. Cliffhanger. The ground shook violently as a massive warship descended rapidly towards them, its engines roaring like thunder. The storm intensified, and Jack's mind raced. What had he just become a part of? The warship descended with a deafening roar, its engines blasting air and sand in every direction. The ground beneath Jack's feet cracked as the massive vessel touched down, its sheer weight sending shockwaves through the desert. The sandstorm intensified, swirling in violent circles around the ship like it was feeding on the chaos. Jack shielded his eyes from the blinding wind, his heart racing as the warship's engines hummed with an otherworldly power. The air felt thick, almost alive, like the planet itself was reacting to the ship's presence. As the dust began to settle, Jack saw the larger alien creature stand tall in front of him, its glowing eyes locked on the warship. The smaller creature stayed close, its body tense with anticipation. They had led him this far, and now Jack could feel the weight of their decision. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about something bigger, a conflict that stretched beyond the stars. The doors of the warship hissed open, revealing a shadowy figure silhouetted against the glowing lights inside. The alien leader from earlier emerged, tall and imposing, its dark robes flowing like smoke. Its eyes glowed with an intensity that seemed to pierce through Jack, as though it was measuring him, trying to determine whether he was a threat or an ally. The figure stepped forward, and the very air seemed to hum with its presence. Like every step it took shook the fabric of reality itself. Without a word, the leader extended a hand toward Jack. There was no fear in its gesture, only an eerie calm, as though it knew exactly what was happening. Jack stared at the hand, unsure of what to do. His mind raced. This was it, the moment that had been building since he first fed those creatures. But now, he wasn't sure he was ready for what came next. The larger alien creature beside him made a soft sound, a low hum, that seemed to resonate with the leader. Jack felt his heart skip a beat. It was a signal, a sign that whatever was about to unfold had been planned, orchestrated, and Jack had unknowingly become a part of it. Suddenly, the air around them shimmered, and a holographic map appeared above the warship, casting eerie blue light across the desert. Jack could see the entire galaxy laid out before him, bright stars, distant planets, and systems he had never imagined. The leader's eyes never left Jack's as it began to speak in a language Jack couldn't understand. Yet, somehow, the meaning was clear. The creatures he had helped weren't mere strays. They were the last survivors of an ancient, powerful race, exiled to this barren planet after a deadly civil war. The warships had come to reclaim them and, by extension, reclaim their lost empire. Jack's mind reeled with the weight of the revelation. He had unwittingly become part of a galactic power struggle, caught between 2 factions with histories older than humanity itself. He wasn't just an observer anymore. He was a player in a game of unimaginable stakes. The leader's voice grew louder, more commanding. "You are the key," it said, though the words sounded alien, far into Jack's ears. "Your kindness, it has awakened something in us. You will help us, or you will be destroyed." The threat hung in the air. But it wasn't just about survival anymore. Jack wasn't sure what he was meant to do, but he knew one thing for certain: his actions had set something in motion, something that couldn't be stopped. He wasn't sure whether the warships would protect him or use him. But one thing was clear, there was no turning back now. The holographic map flickered, and Jack saw a distant planet, his home, Earth. It was no longer just a speck in the vastness of space. It was the center of a battle that had just begun. Cliffhanger. As the warship's engines roared to life, Jack felt the ground tremble again. The air crackled with energy, and the leader turned to him, its gaze sharp and unyielding. "You have no choice," it said. "Prepare for what comes next." The hum of the warship's engines vibrated through Jack's chest as the ship slowly began to lift off, its enormous shadow casting an eerie pall over the desert below. The air felt thick with anticipation, charged with a sense of inevitability. Jack was being pulled into something far greater than he had ever imagined. The alien creatures, still standing beside him, now seemed like ancient warriors preparing for a battle that had been centuries in the making. Their eyes, once filled with uncertainty, now gleamed with a newfound purpose. The leader remained silent, its presence still as commanding as ever. Yet there was something different in its demeanor, a certain calmness, as if the time for discussion had ended. Jack had no words left, no questions that could prepare him for the storm that was approaching. The warships above formed an unbroken wall in the sky, blocking out the stars, a quiet reminder of the power they wielded. The larger creature beside Jack stepped forward, moving with grace and precision, its eyes fixed on the fleet in the sky. Jack followed, his heart pounding as he took tentative steps, unsure of what awaited him. The smaller creature, its body still trembling from the earlier storm, remained close by his side, its gaze shifting between Jack and the leader. There was a tension in the air, a sense that the next moments would decide not only their fate, but the fate of countless others. As the warships continued to hover above, Jack could feel the weight of the leader's eyes on him. The figure had not spoken, but Jack could sense that it was waiting for him to make a move, to take the next step. He had unknowingly become part of something much larger, something that stretched across the galaxies, and the realization hit him harder than any explosion could have. The creatures, the ships, the war, everything was about to come to a head, and Jack had a role to play. A low rumble echoed through the ground, and Jack looked up just in time to see the warship in front of him open, its massive doors sliding apart to reveal an entrance. The cold air inside felt like it came from another world, sharp and unfamiliar. The leader gave a slight nod, a signal that it was time to move forward. Jack hesitated for just a moment before stepping inside, his feet heavy with the weight of his decision. The interior of the warship was unlike anything he had ever imagined. There were no familiar comforts, just an alien, almost sterile environment. The walls shimmered with strange patterns, and the floor beneath his feet hummed with a low, pulsing energy. As Jack walked deeper into the ship, he could feel the eyes of the alien creatures on him, as though they were watching his every move, waiting for him to understand what he was meant to do. Without a word, the leader motioned for Jack to follow. The corridor they entered was long and winding, illuminated by strange, glowing lights embedded in the walls. Jack's steps echoed in the silence, his mind racing with 1,000 questions, none of which had clear answers. The air inside the ship felt alive, like the walls themselves were aware of their presence. And then, as they reached the end of the corridor, Jack saw it a massive control room, its center dominated by a holographic map that displayed the entire galaxy in brilliant detail. It was here, Jack realized, that everything would come together. The warships, the ancient creatures, and the power that now flowed through the ship. They were all part of a plan that Jack had yet to understand fully. Cliffhanger. The leader turned to face him, its eyes glowing brighter than before. "You are not just a witness," it said, its voice calm but filled with weight. "You are the key to our victory." The holographic map flickered as Jack stared at it, his mind still trying to process everything that had happened. The galaxy sprawled before him, a vast sea of stars and planets, each one seemingly insignificant in the grand scheme of things. But as his eyes traced the paths of the warships, he realized something. A certain constellation was highlighted in glowing red, pulsating with an eerie light. It was a system he had never seen before, far beyond the reaches of human exploration. The leader's voice broke the silence, sharp and commanding. "This is where it begins. it said, its tone carrying the weight of millennia of history. The war we've been fighting has been long and relentless. But now you are part of it. The fate of countless worlds rests on your actions. Jack's heart raced as he tried to understand. His mind flashed back to the moment he had fed the two alien creatures. That single, seemingly insignificant choice had set this chain of events into motion. He hadn't asked for this, hadn't signed up for intergalactic warfare. But now there was no turning back. He was part of something much bigger than he could have imagined. The warships, the creatures, the leader all had come for him. And his actions had triggered their rival. The leader turned to him, its gaze intense, almost as though it could see every thought racing through his mind. You will guide us to victory, human. You will help us reclaim our empire. You will help us conquer the system. Jack felt a cold chill run down his spine. Conquer? This wasn't just a fight for survival, it was a full-scale war. The stakes had grown impossibly high, and he realized the true weight of the responsibility placed on his shoulders. Could he really be part of this? Could he align himself with these beings, with their long and brutal history? Or would he find a way to stop it all before it was too late? The leader's hand gestured to the map, and Jack noticed several other systems marked in similar red, all interconnected by a web of lines. It wasn't just a fight for a single world, it was a coordinated campaign, a plan to sweep across the galaxy and re-establish an empire that had long since crumbled. Jack swallowed hard, his throat dry. His mind raced. Was this what they had come for? To use him as a tool in their quest for dominance? Before he could answer, the larger alien creature beside him stepped forward, its glowing eyes filled with determination. It seemed to understand Jack's hesitation. Without a word, it placed a firm hand on Jack's shoulder, an unspoken gesture of solidarity. The small creature followed suit, nuzzling against his leg as if to reassure him. Despite their alien nature, despite the vast chasm between their worlds, there was something undeniably human about their trust in him. For the first time, Jack understood. This wasn't just about fighting alongside these creatures. It was about a choice to align with them or to stand against them, to fight for survival or to fight for something greater. He had been given a chance to make a difference, but the cost was higher than anything he had ever imagined. The leader's voice broke through his thoughts, sharp and final. You will join us or you will die with the rest. Jack's chest tightened, but a strange sense of clarity washed over him. He knew now that there was no easy choice. The decision was his fight, or be crushed by the weight of history. Cliffhanger. As the warship's engines powered up, Jack took a deep breath, his heart steadying. The final choice was before him, but the consequences of that choice would echo through the stars. The ships above rumbled, and the galaxy awaited his answer.